So 21 Pilots have just released the second single off of their upcoming album, Breach. The song is entitled Drum Show, and along with the music that they released, they also put out a music video on YouTube. Now, there are a number of interesting aspects about the song, and one of the first is the fact that there is such a gap of time between the release of this single and the first single which they put out off of Breach. That song being The Contract. For the first time in 21 Pilots history, there was a total of 67 days which elapsed between the first and second singles off of their upcoming album. And it is also notable because it has now been confirmed that this is the only other song which they're going to be releasing before September 12th, when the entire album drops as a whole. At which point they will also be releasing a music video for one of the songs off of that album, City Walls, the opening track. But there will not be any other preview singles, as it were, which come out before album release day. But besides the more logistical side of things, in terms of rolling out an album release, this song is actually more significant for a much more interesting reason, and one which I think most people are more fascinated by, and that is the fact, for the first time in 21 Pilots history, the drummer, Josh Dun, has had a vocal feature on a studio-released 21 Pilots song. Now, I added in those caveats for a particular reason, because he was featured on the MTV Unplugged Live album, which they put out back in 2023, which featured reimaginings and remixings of, I believe, 7 or perhaps 9 of their songs, given that they mashed a couple together, and which also featured a number of vocal performances from Josh Dun. However, that wasn't a studio-released album in the same way. That was more of a live recording in a live performance and so on. Josh has also been known to deliver backing vocals on a number of songs in the past, but again, this is the first time that he has ever had an entire vocal line delivered by himself. And we see that happen in the bridge of this song, Drum Show. Now, it is no coincidence that this is the song which they chose to give him his vocal debut, as it were, because this is also the first 21 Pilots song that I'm aware of that we know for certain is written about Josh Dun. Now, there are other songs which they've put out in the past which some people might interpret as being written about or to Josh. But this is the first one in which it is very clear, both from the music and the music video that they put out, that this song is both directed to and it's directed about Josh Dun. And then, of course, also features him singing part of it, which makes it all the more clear, because the lines he sings are in the first person. It is clear that he is saying this about himself. So, with that in mind, let us take a look at the lyrics of this song and see what they're about, what they have to say about the drummer of 21 Pilots. Looking at the first verse first, we see these lines. Complete a checklist for today. Now they have to let you out of your cage, feeling stuck between a rock and a home. 2 places you do not want to go. So this describes him leaving work, obviously, and he's traveling home, but it's not clear that he really wants to get home. He doesn't like his job. He doesn't like where he lives. So for a little while, he's stuck in this kind of intermediate place where he's not at either, but he's not really in a place of rest. He has to drive from one to the other. And then presumably the next day he has to turn around and do the same thing in reverse. So in order to kind of cope with this or distract from the situation, he puts on music as he drives, as we see in the chorus. So let's take a look at that. He's putting on a drum show. Even now, he will take the longer way home. Even now, he'll never say so. He drives fast just to feel it. He drives slow if the song's not over. Drown it out. I think the idea contained in this chorus is a sentiment which a lot of people can relate with and really speaks to Josh Dun as an individual based off of other things that we've seen him say in interviews in the past, and also really the song as a whole, which makes sense. It's the chorus. And at this point, I think it's worth considering for a moment what this idea of a drum show is really about, what it means in the context of this song. Because a lot of people were a little unsure before the song came out what exactly that meant. A song called Drum Show. Now, it was kind of assumed that the song was going to be very heavy on featuring Josh Dun, which it is. I think there was somewhat of an expectation that there was going to be perhaps a drum solo somewhere in there, and there wasn't quite that, although it is very heavy on drumming all the way throughout the song. But more than that, I think some people were a little confused about how you're going to have a song about a drum show, or called Drum Show, which contains lyrics, and isn't just kind of vapid and like singing about someone playing drums. Because that isn't exactly what's going on here. I think there's something deeper, and I think it's kind of exactly what you should expect 21 Pilots to do with a song with this title. Now, I mentioned ago some things that we learned from Josh Dun giving interviews in the past, or some things that he said in past interviews during the different eras and so on. And one thing that he's said time and time again is the reason that he got into music and specifically got into drumming is because the drummer is kind of more at the back of the stage, isn't very prominent, and it's a way he can hide behind the drums and the drum set and not have to be so prominent and so front of stage and things like that. And so I think this song speaks to that, and we'll see this more in the following verses and as the song wraps up, but it speaks to it in two different ways. It isn't just talking about playing music, even drum-heavy music, on your way home, which is something we know he's also mentioned in the past, that he was always drawn to the songs with heavier drumming and so on, which makes perfect sense given the instrument that he plays. But it isn't just about that. It isn't just about escaping into music specifically. Again, that's something that both Josh and Tyler have talked about time and again, how they use music as a form of escape, a way to deal with or cope with things that they're struggling with, a way to express what it is that they're struggling with. But that isn't all that's going on here. There's something more interesting. Just like Tyler has Blurry Face as the mask that he wears, there's a sense in which Josh has the drums as the mask that he wears. He gets behind the drum set to hide his insecurities and disappear into a drummer and a drum set and all of that, rather than people seeing him as an individual person who's like very prominent, right? And so it's a drum show because the drums are what he shows to the world as the mask that he wears to hide behind, just like Blurry Face is the mask that Tyler wore. And this isn't a new concept, this idea of masks. We see this in Guns for Hands, right? At the beginning of that music video, they both put masks on. We see it in Car Radio. Really, all throughout the Vessel era, there's a physical mask, and then Blurry Face turns into this sort of personified metaphorical mask. But then even in albums like the self-titled album and songs like Trapdoor. And then we get the second verse, and this is interesting because there are a number of parallels to be drawn here between this song, or this verse more specifically, and the song Car Radio, which again, as I mentioned a moment ago, was very mask heavy. The verse goes as follows: he'd rather feel something than nothing at all, so he swerves all around as his head starts to fall, turns it up, stuck between a rock and a home, two places he doesn't want to go. Remember, the song Car Radio is really kind of the companion piece to this song. Here he's playing blasting music to drown out his insecurities and his struggles and so on. And in Car Radio, Tyler isn't able to do that, so he's brought face to face with all of them. But there's also that line in Car Radio, I could pull the steering wheel, which could be seen to relate to this. He'd rather feel something, so he swerves all around, driving recklessly on the road just so he can feel something. Then we get the chorus once again, and then it goes into a bridge, and this is where Josh Dunn's vocals are featured very prominently as he leads the bridge. And then it ends with Tyler coming in with a fantastic scream, and then it goes back into the chorus one final time with it is a much heavier and more screamy version of the chorus for this final iteration of it. But going back to the bridge for a moment, Josh sings these lines: I've been this way, I want to change. I've been this way, I want to change. So this very much solidifies that this song is about Josh, because he's singing them. I, being Josh, have been this way. And obviously the way that he's been is everything that's come before, right? It's pretty obvious that this is referring to what the song's talking about. So okay, it's very clear that it's him. But this raises the question, as 21 Pilots are getting to this point of ending this story and ending this era, this more than a decade, perhaps a decade and a half long era of 21 Pilots, they're taking a break and they're going to come back with something else in the future. Who knows when, but at some point they'll come back and they'll at least somewhat have reimagined themselves. So perhaps this is hinting towards that in some way as well, because this must be something that's been on their minds for a while. So it makes sense that that would seep into the music as well. That Josh, not that he wants to abandon drumming, but that he wants to use the drums and drumming less as a way to put on a mask and hide behind it, but he wants to come forward a bit more. Perhaps to sing a bit more. Perhaps he's going to make a change, and in the future version of 21 Pilots, he will be a more prominent singer. That would be pretty cool to see. He certainly has a decent enough voice, and certainly the vocals that he delivers on this song fit the song very well. So, and I've been saying this since MTV Unplugged came out. I certainly hope they continue to feature Josh more and more as they go on. And again, that could be something which we see them shifting towards in their reimagined version of themselves several years hence. So again, we get that final chorus, a bit more screamy, and then we go into the outro, which again features Josh Dun singing, I've been this way, I want to change, I've been this way, I want to. And then it cuts off. And that is the entirety of the song Drum Show. And I have to say, I liked the song a lot more than I thought I would. And before you jump down my throat for that statement, allow me to contextualize it a little bit. From the teasers that we got, especially in the past couple days, right before Drum Show was released, it sounded very much like it was going to be a song, and it is a song in the style of Next Semester. But Next Semester, while I like it and I think it's a good song, I don't think I would ever say that it is one of my favorite songs off of Clancy. In fact, I don't think I would say it's one of my 7 favorite songs off of Clancy. Again, It's a good song, the lyrics are great, the message behind it is great. I'm very glad that song exists, and I often listen to it. I don't hate it, but it's not one of my favorites, and the style of it is not exactly one of my favorite stylings for music in general or 21 Pilots. So I wasn't extremely disappointed by the fact that Drum Show was going to be more in that style. I just didn't think I was going to like it as much as I ended up liking it. But what they did do with this song, I think, was fantastic. Lyrically, it's quite good, and it's very interesting to see a song which is focused on Josh Dun. I'm very glad that they brought in him to give a vocal performance, and I thought Tyler's vocals were very interesting, and the styling on it was quite interesting all throughout as well. And that second verse, the way it is performed and the music and sound of that second verse in particular, I really liked. It reminded me somewhat of the second verse and in general of the style of At the Risk of Feeling Dumb. Not quite, that song actually sounds quite different, obviously, but there were some similarities between them, and I think for some reason that second verse in both those songs sort of seemed to have a parallel. And perhaps those who are more versed in music and music theory can explain why that is better than I can. But yes, I liked Drum Show quite a lot, and I think Breach is shaping up to be a fantastic album. And we only have a few more weeks to wait before it is out in its entirety. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. This was just a brief reaction to this new song that just came out by 21 Pilots, Drum Show. Take a listen if you haven't already heard it. Watch the music video if you haven't already watched it. It is quite good. An excellent follow-up to the first single off the album. The full-length album is coming out September 12th. The first song on that album, City Walls, will be getting a music video on that date. Make sure to comment your own thoughts on this song below. Be curious to hear what you thought of it. And of course, as always, don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep up with everything that's happening with 21 Pilots and for more music reviews and commentary.